Many of you from Amadeus 5 will be familiar with what is called the multi-company or multi-tenant module. What we've done in Amadeus 8, we've merged the multi-company and the multi-site modules, and we've simply called it multi-site, right? So I'd like to remind you or to explain to you very briefly, what is multi-site? Okay, so by way of example, imagine you have the company Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola is a multinational company. Let's imagine they have their head office in the United States, and they have factories in other countries. They have factories in India and the United Kingdom and Australia and Canada, various countries throughout the world. Every factory in those countries represents an independent site. Every site has its own infrastructure, its own network, its own networks, its own controllers, its own weekly programs, its own holidays, its own departments, etc., etc. I'd like to show you an example of the multi-site in the infrastructure screen. So in the infrastructure tree on the left, you can see I've created two sites called Site 1 and Site 2. In Site 1, I'm going to click on one of its networks, in this case called Main Office, and you'll notice that this network has an owner. In this case, Site 1 is the owner of the network. Right? Every asset in the multi-site module, by asset I mean a network or controller or its readers or inputs, every asset is owned by its site. If I click here on a controller, then you'll see again its owner is Site 1. If I click on the readers table and open the pop-up of one of the readers, you'll see its owner is Site 1. And similarly, right, for Site 2. It's possible, I just want to point out at this stage, it's possible to change the ownership of a network and its controller. Right? For example, I've clicked here on Main Office, which is a network in Site 1. So you'll see in the site field, if I open the site field, you see a drop-down list, Site 1 and Site 2. If I were to select here Site 2 and save, then I would be able to move the Main Office network and its controllers to Site 2, and they would now be owned by Site 2. Okay, so that's an overview of the infrastructure screen. I'd like to point out that currently we're logged in as the admin user, right? The admin user is by default a super user. A super user simply means that he has complete access to all of the sites in the system, right? So at the moment, take note that we're able to see Site 1 and Site 2. I'd like to give you now a brief overview of the user screen and how it works in the multi-site module. Let's click on this card holder. This card holder, you'll see if you can follow my cursor, this card holder is owned by Site 1. In the sites field, if you open the sites field, right, you'll see that that Site 1 is checked. What that means is that this card holder is not only owned by Site 1, but he has authorization only for Site 1. Similarly, I'm going to click on a Site 2 card holder. You'll see the owner is Site 2, and this card holder has access only to Site 2. But if I click on this card holder, you'll see this card holder has both Site 1 and Site 2 checked, meaning even though she is owned by Site 1, she has authorization for both Site 1 and Site 2. You'll see here there is a super user checkbox. That means if I am logged in as a super user, as I am now, I'm able to create another super user simply by checking the super user checkbox and and saving the user. I'd like to give you now a brief overview of the cardholders screen. What you see in front of you, I have grouped the cardholders as follows. You'll see Site 1 and Site 2 have been grouped into what is called global, local, and shared cardholders. So let's expand the local cardholders group. So what you're seeing here is all of my Site 1 local cardholders. What do we mean by local? Typically, if a cardholder, their type is local, it means that they have access only to Site 1. So all of these cardholders will have access to Site 1 readers only. If I expand the shared cardholders for Site 1, a shared cardholder is somebody who typically has access to his own site, in this case Site 1, but perhaps sometimes he also needs to visit Site 2. And I'll show you shortly how that works in practice. Now, the third and final type of cardholder is a global cardholder. Right? A global cardholder is typically a cardholder who would have to visit many or perhaps all of the sites in your system. Let me show you an example of how this would work with a specific cardholder. I'm going to search for a specific cardholder and open her pop-up. Okay, in the cardholder pop-up, you can see at the bottom a multi-site group, which you can expand. And in this field called Share Type, from this field, I'm able to change the type of the cardholder from local to shared or to global. I'm also able to change the owner of the cardholder. I could change the owner of this cardholder from Site 1 to Site 2. However, if I were to open the cardholder pop-up of a cardholder who is a user, you'll see that the owner field has been disabled. Because if a cardholder is a user, you cannot change the owner of the user. Okay, I'm going to log out and log in as a user who has access, authorization, only to Site 1, to show you what does the GUI look like, what does the infrastructure look like from the perspective of a Site 1 only user. Okay, so we're logged in now as a Site 1 user, and as you can see in the tree on the left, we can see only now Site 1. As opposed to when we were logged in as the admin super user, we were able to see all of the sites in the infrastructure. If you move to the cardholders screen, as you would expect, this Site 1 user can see all of the Site 1 cardholders in the infrastructure. He cannot see the Site 2 local cardholders, but he can see Site 2 shared and global cardholders. Right? The reason that he'd be able to see those cardholders is because if there is a Site 2 global or shared cardholder, so he may want to give them access to his Site 1 readers. We're going to log out and log in as a Site 2 user, just to show you the contrast between the Site 1 and the Site 2. Okay, we're logged in as a Site 2 user. So if you move to the infrastructure screen, as you'd expect, you can see now only the Site 2 infrastructure. If you move to the cardholders screen, he can see all of his Site 2 cardholders, global, local, and shared. But of the Site 1 cardholders, he can see only the global and the shared, but not the local cardholders. If you have a look at the event log, right, again, we're logged in as a Site 2 user, so he can see access events coming from a Site 2 cardholder, or you can see alarms coming from a Site 2 input, right? Let me show you an example here. Right, here I have, for example, a Galaxy panel, which is owned by Site 2, right? And those he can see, right? But he would not be able to see in the event log or in the display events screen. He would not be able to see Site 1 access events or alarm events. Okay, and I'd like to show you an example of what happens with the functionality of a shared card holder. Let's open here a Site 1 shared card holder. Okay, so again, just to remind you, we're logged in as a Site 2 user, but I've opened a Site 1 shared card holder, right? Now you'll see that the fields are disabled, or most of the fields are disabled, right? Right, that means the Site 1 shared card holder is a read-only format for a Site 2 user. However, a Site 2 user could give this Site 1 card holder access at their readers, right? For example, by adding a temporary reader in the temporary access tab, they could add one of their Site 2 readers, or they could add a personal door access group containing a Site 2 reader. They could add that to this Site 1 card holder. And then the Site 1 card holder would have access to the Site 2 readers.